Jutta basically, it's always good to listen to what Jutta has to say, because basically she's very often ahead of the game. This lady wrote a book about scaling Agile back in 2004 when nobody was thinking about it. It wasn't even a twinkle in Liam Deffingwell's eye, and Jutta wrote a book about it.
And nobody was interested in it at the time.
Sorry?
No, I'm not sure.
Yeah, well, still, you were, it wasn't the thing. And the other ones, you had distributed teams, I can recall as well, which is now the major issue where we are at the moment.
True.
Pay attention to what she has to say. She's always ahead of the curve, and this is going to be interesting. Now, she's going to talk to us today about Bossa Nova, which is a fusion of beyond budgeting, open space, sociocracy, and agile. So I mean, a really small topic, not a lot to it.
No.
In 5 minutes.
We just tried to bring all the buzzwords together.
Exactly. And just stick them together. But before we start on that, when we were having our chat beforehand, Jutta and myself, about this to get ready for the talk, I noticed an awful lot of C++ books behind her. And I said, wow, can I mention the fact that you've got 82 C++ books behind you?
Stick there.
Up there. And Jutta said, well, no, I didn't. I programmed a bit of C, but I started with Smalltalk. So turns out Jutta was Agile before we were even calling it Agile. Do you want to tell us a little bit about programming Smalltalk back in '97 before they actually coined it all?
Yeah, well, actually, there's one thing that I have to kind of correct. So I started off with C++. But then I learned about Smalltalk, and then, oh, I see, lovely Smalltalk. So, thank you, some people in the chat here. And then I had another C++ project, and actually I said, I can't do this anymore now that I know Smalltalk. So I completely like, no, not for me. And yes, you're absolutely correct that this is, in my opinion, one of the pillars of Agile. And you can tell so by looking at especially the first Agile approaches, which were like XP and of course Scrum. And both of them have been based in Smalltalk. So the people who have developed those, like Kent Beck, Walt Cunningham, Ken Schwaber, Jeff Sutherland, they were all Smalltalk people. Yep. And a lot that you see in Agile is kind of a typical approach how you develop software when you develop in Smalltalk. And so this was more like, translating it for other people so they can benefit maybe from that too. And of course, it has changed over the years. So I'm not saying it's exactly the same thing, but it was really coming from there. And back in the time, so I really think it was like 97, 98, I don't know. We had already like test first approach, and so it was later on it was called then S unit, so not having J unit, right, for Smalltalk, but first it was just a unit testing framework because it was the only one that existed. And also we had like a refactoring browser already existing, so refactoring was also kind of it. So probably more on the technical side, but still, so what you know from how we develop software in Agile is actually how it has always been done in Smalltalk.
Yeah, exactly. As you said, Kent Beck, the XP side of things. Also, as far as I know, Arthur Coburn came out of that Smalltalk.
That's true.
Thing as well. So it's actually quite a few. You know, it was like the starter. And when people ask that question, you know, before Agile, you know, this is what people were doing. Cool.
Right.
Yeah. So as I was saying with the Bossa Nova, do you want to give us a really quick overview, a quick summary, because I just said fusion of the four things, but you want to go a little bit and then we'll get into each one individually afterwards.
Okay. So actually we were driven, so I'm saying we because I co-authored that together with John Buck, and we were driven by the fact that companies are asked to be agile at the moment, and probably more so now than they were like 2 years ago or when the book first came out. So everyone is talking about the VUCA world and so on. Yeah, I guess I don't need to explain that. But now in the pandemic, it's a real thing. Before that, we were all talking about it, but it often felt like people didn't really get it, what we are after. But now that everyone has just picking out one thing, like have created a budget plan using hours and hours and hours last year, and in March everyone figured, well, it was a waste of time. Anyway, so our approach was, okay, companies need to be agile, and what does this mean, being agile? And one thing was clear, that just agile is really not enough. It but it mainly looks at the process. It is more coming from IT, from software development, and it might stop already with the vocabulary that it's hard to grasp from other parts of the company. And so we were looking what else is out there, and therefore we found those 4 streams, all, I would say, being really orthogonal, what a difficult word, to each other. So they complement each other, much better word. And looking at a company from a different angle. So beyond budgeting, you hear it already in the word. So it looks more on the finance part, like what I said. So that's probably not a good idea to fix the budget up front, really, because then we are not flexible anymore to react on market changes also. Then open space is more looking at how can we leverage the full potential of every person. So not reducing people to how we have defined their roles as a job description. Then sociocracy is more looking at the power and how the power is structured or distributed or maybe centralized. And then we have agile. And actually what I kind of maybe skipped when I said, well, that the times are asking companies to be agile. But what I think is really important to understand, agile really is meant here in the literal sense. So it's not asking companies to be Scrum companies or XP or whatever your favorite thing is here. It is really agile in the literal sense, meaning being responsive, fast, adaptive, flexible, nimble, so all of that. So it's not really going down to a specific approach, but more having this built in as an attitude. Like, yeah, maybe even built in the DNA of the company in order to act that way.
I think for several companies that would be a DNA transplant rather than DNA already.
Yeah. Right.
Beyond budgeting, I've been known to say that if I could change one person in the company, I would go to the CFO and say, stop getting people to plan 3-year projects that cost 2 million, end up taking 5 years and costing 6 million, because it's not a way to, there is no flexibility. People are measured by how well they stay in budget. People quite often hear about departments using up the budget by the end of the year, otherwise we don't get it next year. And sometimes think some of our behavior in companies is driven by the way we handle deadline. It's like in the Iron Triangle, it's the budget and the time is very often set by the financial thinking in the company. So how does Beyond Budgeting do this differently?
Yeah, so it's really, first of all, this understanding that the classic behavior that we are seeing that's asked in budgeting is not helping the company. And this is really something that needs to be understood in this way, that often, well, often, but at times, people think that this is how they have control over what's happening with the budget. And it's actually just the opposite is true. As you say, like, well, people, I would say, like us, often benefit also from that, you know, that towards the end of the year, people figure, oh, they still have that budget left here and we need to spend it. And therefore, we ask Robert to come in and give a training or some consulting or whatever, you know, and this is sometimes good for us, but it's not necessarily helpful for the companies because they might not need it at this specific moment or not for those bunch of people and so on. So first of all, the really interesting thing for me is different than, I would say, all of the other streams and all of the other stuff we in the Agile field, so we in quotes, whoever is we really here, have been developed. Beyond budgeting has not been developed by consultants. Like Agile, I would say, is more a consultants thing, that people from the outside are observing what's going on and then suggesting something different and let us try this. And so we do it that way and so on. And beyond budgeting has been really more or less discovered from within. So not all CFOs are the ones you want to throw out. So they were CFOs, and several of them who discovered that the way budgeting is taught or finance is taught isn't really helpful. So this is a really important thing to understand.
So, just to understand that properly. So this is really, this is something that's been driven from within the
yes.
I mean, I love, actually in Austria or in German, I think it's called controlling, is actually the word used for budgeting. And the word says it all, you know, that, so this is actually driven by people who, so this is nothing to do with agility.
Exactly.
They were seeing that these 5-year plans maybe weren't
are not helpful, or even the 1-year plan is not helpful. And it's not helpful, I also see that comment here, controlling against the plan. You should control against the outcome, right? And this is what they also discovered. So if you will, you could also argue, well, this is good on the one hand. On the other hand, so that it has been discovered from within. On the one hand, this is bad because that's probably the main reason why it takes for beyond budgeting so long to really get spread in the companies, but because there are not really beyond budgeting consultants running around. The one who is spreading the word the most is, I assume, everyone who has once looked into that knows Jutta Eckstein, despite that his name is hard to pronounce or remember. But it's like the one guy who got some leeway from his company to get out actually and tell the world. He is not a consultant. He's still working with, come on, now I have only the old name, the Statoil, but I know they are Equinor, sorry. They have been renamed so that the oil gets out of the company's name, so Equinor, and is still there, but he also has some free time to actually spread.
Seriously, the oil company changed its name with oil in the name to Eco-Nor, as in ecological. Oh God.
Yeah, well, actually, what's really interesting, and I'm not saying whatever they are doing is really great, but they really understood something that some other oil companies haven't understood yet. So they clearly say, we are aware that we are part of the problem that we are seeing right now with the climate change, and we also want to be part of the solution. And one way what they are doing, and they're really good with that, is that they're saying we have so much experience with these offshore oil platforms, and why not using that experience for offshore wind platforms or plants, right? And again, I'm not saying that everything that they are doing is fine. They are also still in oil, and they made most of their money with oil. I'm not sure what the distribution is right now, but they really understand that something like this is happening. And I haven't heard that from Shell, for example, so much, or BP or so. So that's really a difference. Well, I haven't really answered your question. You know what?
No, you were saying it from
which was what it is.
What form does it take if we compare it with what we're used to, even yearly annual budgeting? What form does this now take?
Yeah. So the first thing is that you need to understand that a budget, as we know it, actually really aims for 3 different purposes. So on the one hand, it looks for the target. So what is it that we want to achieve? Then it looks at a forecast, what do we think will happen? And then it also puts in the resource allocation, which is how much money do we want to spend where? And all these 3 things together, these 3 different purposes are actually put into one number. And this is kind of one of the things that beyond budgeting people say, that's a bad idea, because as soon as you have packed that together, you cannot really individually look at those things. And if you look at these individually, you can come up with, for example, relative targets, which could be, are we better than last year, or how do we compare to our competitors or whatever. So probably the last one is, especially in this times, well, it depends also where you're looking at for the budget, is probably the strongest, because if you think of like whatever your plan was for this year, and now I'm probably taking a very simple example here. If I'm, as a salesperson, had the objective of selling 100 of our whatever products we are creating, and then Corona came in, and well, there's no way of doing that. And however, I might have sold 60 of those products, then it means I will not get my bonus because I didn't reach the target, right? However, maybe 60 is amazing because our competitor has only sold like 10 of the competitive products. So a relative target says often much more in this VUCA world than the absolute target. That's the typical thing that we are seeing. Then for the forecast, if you separate this out, then it's more, so one term that comes with it is like a rolling forecast. So you look into this frequently. You could also think of, maybe you have kind of iteration sprint, something where you look every once in a while into, okay, what do we think will happen in the next few weeks or the next months? And then this drives, where do we want to spend our money, which also means that it's more dynamic resource allocation. And I probably have to say that resource here means really money, and it's not, we are not talking about people. I know that in the Agile world, and I'm in the Agile world myself, right? But people, whenever they hear resource, they're like, ah! And so it's really money. And yes, money can also be spent on people, but it's more the general term here.
We're looking at a higher level of inspect and adapt, basically, in terms of targets, and also it sounds like a more outcome driven way of looking at, rather than allocating and to a certain extent fire and forget. We've put the money to this, they better deliver it. Because one of the things you often see in companies is people know how the game works in the company. So they know they brought in a project plan. They know the project plan says 2 years and 3 million. And they know full well when they put this plan in that it's actually going to take 3 years and 4 million or 5 million. And I often think the guys are doing the budgeting, they know this too. I think they put something to
exactly.
It's a game. It's
It's just a pretended way of controlling it. You are not in control, actually, not at all.
So but maybe just keeping an eye on the time there, so we'll move on to the next bit. But because open space was interesting, you were talking about different roles, and the funny thing, I often associate open space, but more with the concept of roll in rather than roll out. It's like bringing the people who actually want to do something together, and enabling them or giving them space to actually do something. But how does this open space fit in with your the way you're thinking of it?
I'm really glad that you are asking about that, because the open space part of Bossa Nova is the thing that I think we did at the beginning the worst job in explaining what we really have in mind here. So a lot of people thought of like hearing open space as being part of Bossa Nova. It is like open space agility as part of that, or ask us, why didn't you put in liberating structures then? And so this would be all. So this topic is about like facilitation, right? However, this is not what we had in mind or have in mind. So what we have in mind with open space within the Bossa Nova synthesis, more like using the open space principles as a strategy. And probably the thing that's the most well-known, I assume, is that this means then for companies, for example, working with self-selecting teams. as you know it from open space, where people decide by themselves what they're passionate about and what they want to work on, discuss, and so on. So the same is true if this is your strategy in the company, that actually people self-select the team and therefore the product they are working on. And if you really go further with that, for example, W.L. Gore is working this way, so the outdoor equipper. So everyone is at any time invited to come up with a new product, feature, service. And if the person can find enough people who are passionate about bringing that to life, then it's a go. So it's not this, I don't know, long, boring, often frustrating process of like how ideas are channeled in and going through different rounds of discussions in companies till there's a decision like 2 years later. I know I'm maybe exaggerating, but this is when the person long has lost interest in doing so, right? So it's a lightweight approach, just like you know it from open space as a facilitation technique, to also be innovative in the company.
Must take quite a bit of sort of the, you know, like for any kind of, in a sense, self-organization, to use that word, of self-management, but there must be some sort of boundary conditions which the company sets, because it's a big investment for the company to give this sort of freedom or possibility to
freedom. You know what? You know what it really means is we have to trust our people. And okay, the thing is, now you can always say, oh, exactly what you're saying, and I get it. The thing is, well, in the first place, those people have been employed because I think somebody has trusted them to do a good job. And why is that trust going away at some point? Or maybe it's going away as soon as the person is in the company. I don't know. Well, the other thing is also trust comes in, I don't know, slices. I'm not sure if this is the right word, really. Well, not only over time, which is also true that it builds up, but what I see in companies, for example, people are trusted to run this, what did you pull out here, like €4 million project, right? So they're trusted to run that and do a decent job and so on. But then, just to put in another example, they are not trusted to decide maybe even what camera they need for working remotely in a good way. You know, it has to go through all the controlling process, and here's our report, and you better not do this, and we are only, you know, and so this is a very strong signal that, well, we trust you to run this project, but we don't trust you over there. And I think we all can do much better in like putting trust on a more broader basis. And again, we have decided for those people, for all our colleagues at one point in time, and it should still hold.
So instead of having a controlling department, we should really have a department.
Right. Actually, this is maybe a good point, because I see this comment also about budgeting and self-adjustment, and trust also often comes down to money. So it is true that it is also a self-adjustment thing. However, you can work with that. So one thing is, for example, you can have something like unit cost targets. You can spend more if you produce more. And this is a self-adjustment way of controlling it. Or you can have like profit targets where you say like you spend so that you maximize your bottom line, and nobody asks what you're doing, how you're spending it, as long as you're maximizing your bottom line. And of course, another thing which is probably the most well-known thing is more like a burn rate guidance. So you can operate with full autonomy within a level, a range that has been given. And another thing that's also probably better known is not having any kind of target, but kind of saying, okay, you do what you do, and we are monitoring it. And in case we feel like, oh, now it's really going somewhere, we are intervening. So these are kind of different ways of regulating that self-adjustment. And also, because this was where we're coming from right now, also showing more trust.
One of the things I noticed is that also in terms of trust, that you give this guy the project with a 5 million budget, and if he was to think halfway through, this is pointless what we're doing, it's outdated, we need to think, no, he's not allowed to do that. He has to complete the project the way it's described. We see this all the time. How does
Yeah, well, this is the thing, how we are taught stuff, which is not only for budgeting, which is also true for everything else.
So how does sociocracy play into all of this then?
Yeah. So sociocracy is really, as I said before, kind of looking at the power structure, or how power is really used and so on. And one way how we see power being implemented is by how decisions are made. For example, if you think of a central decision-making way, then it just means there is, well, first of all, how I started, companies need to be agile. You are too slow as a company if decisions are made central. So you have to come up with a way of decentralizing decision-making. I can come back to this later. The other thing is, again, looking at the power structure, typically the power is structured, especially in large corporates, top down, how the hierarchy is built. Now, if you really look at the hierarchy from an agile perspective, using your agile lenses, what you see there is what's missing in the structure is a feedback loop. You have only this top down, how the information goes, decisions are called out and all of that, but there is not the feedback loop in place. And sociocracy is actually bringing that feedback in the structure, so really in the hierarchy, and it does it that way by having, well, you have the like top down, the managers, whatever, who have been appointed, but then you have at every level in the hierarchy also somebody who has been elected bottom up, which is then called a double link or an uplink, or somebody who is representing a representative of the level down. And so you have, for every level in the hierarchy, you always have two people actually who are responsible for what's going on. And what this also does is, if you think of the way we often talk about what's going on in companies, we often talk about like the middle managers being in a sandwich position. Probably almost everyone has heard that. And the sandwich position actually just shows that tension these people are in, because there's something coming from the top, but they also feel they're responsible from the bottom, but then this is sometimes conflicting. And so Sociocracy puts this apart, and you then have really different people being responsible for either flow of information and decisions.
Responsible or accountable? Responsible or accountable? How does that sit?
Yeah.
How does that sit?
Yeah, that's a good question. Actually, I was also hesitating, so kind of which word do I use from those two. And I think you're right. I guess I would even more say it's accountable, and responsible is probably more the hierarchy level itself. So it would be like the team. Okay. However, for the team, I would always say those two people are part of the team, at least that they should be, right? It's more like, okay, the one has been trusted from the top and the other person has been trusted from the bottom to be kind of a spokesperson, manager, whatever.
Given how tricky it is even to introduce Agile in IT, how do you start with something like Sociocracy, which seems to be really kind of not turning the world on its head? That maybe that's a bit too much, but it's certainly a challenge to the traditional structure of the organization, probably a lot more so than maybe an Agile team working in the corner on the project is.
So first of all, then the nice thing with Sociocracy, you can even start where you are. You can start with the hierarchy. So it's not asked that you throw it out the door, or that the people who are in these positions, that we don't need them anymore. This is not what Sociocracy says. It's just you can work with that. So this is actually even good. However, I take your question actually a bit broader and saying, how do you introduce something like bossa nova? This is really a tough question. And when we were writing the book, the one way that we did was we were looking at companies who are, in our perspective, agile companies. And then we found also these different streams. So this was kind of the way we looked at it. But then it was also clear to us, now that we have provided the ground, that as a reader, I would ask, now what? Tell me, what should I do? So kind of what you were saying. And on the other hand, it is kind of clear that we cannot say for bossa nova, do 1, 2, 3, and then you are there. So there's no recipe. So that's the big disappointment. However, maybe there is a little recipe, which is more a scientific approach. It's let me first use the term I don't like so much, which is experimenting. So you run one experiment after the other, and with those experiments, you figure out how you make progress. And now I said I don't really like that term, and it's because in our world, experiments often sound like, well, we don't really know what we are doing, and therefore we just try something. Or also sometimes it feels like, oh, the experiment is done to me, so am I a guinea pig for somebody else, and which I don't want to be. And the third thing, which I find even the most important thing, that very often the way I see experiments are run in the agile field, often the scientific part is ignored, which is coming up with a hypothesis at first, and then also asking yourself how you can measure against that hypothesis when you run that experiment. And that can be a really on a whatever low level, like in a retrospective, you come up with your actions, but have you thought about what is the hypothesis, that what kind of change you think will happen with this action, and how do you find out if it really did? So validate or invalidate your hypothesis. Maybe your assumption was completely wrong, or it was the wrong experiment, whatever it is, but this is what you want to learn, really. And so we call this, because of the difficulty often with the understanding about experiments, we call this, because of that, a probe or probing, because it's more like kind of well, actually, and I really want to stress that, that's why I have to make a deep breath. You first start with reflection. And more and more, I believe that's the most important thing that any company can and should do, and every individual can and should do. A reflection on, okay, where are we? What are we assuming? What do we assume will happen if we would make that change? And then come up with the action. What I see too often is people say like, okay, this is the problem, let's change it, and boom. And I know I'm also often like that. I'm an engineer by education, and this is kind of like jumping into solutions is what we also like, right? Yes, exactly. But what we often miss is taking the time to really reflect. And well, you didn't ask that question, but I answer it anyway. So the thing I'm kind of the most proud of with the Bossa Nova book, and it's something that we discovered almost only later on, that we have this sentence towards the end where it says, like, if you are want to be an agile company, a Bossa Nova company, what you need to do is you have to take time for intentional stillness. And we put that in early on, but only discovered it much later that this sentence is there. And I think it's super, super strong. And it's probably the most important thing also now in the pandemic, thinking of like, okay, we really have kind of debrief, looking at what's happening, and then start coming up with hypotheses and actions and
I
like
the use of the word probe, because we're talking about complex systems. It's literally like this is, and you're sticking your finger in it like this, saying, what happens? Exactly. And also the idea that we would have been using, we probably use something along the line of impact mapping when we're thinking about, okay, what's my hypothesis about what should happen or change here? But I think really interesting that with the stillness at the end is, if you do this, you go and ask your companies, oh, we don't have time to stop and think. No.
Exactly.
You're in the...
Exactly. It often feels, even if somebody is just sitting there and thinking, that people think that person is not doing anything.
Okay,
yeah,
stillness.
what
That's
is that?
actually, we would have a...
And it's intentional stillness.
Now, we talked about ending on time, Jutta, but I know you didn't get to start on time, so we can run over by a few minutes. I'm sure people will forgive us this. Is there anything else there you'd like to add on to that we've talked? We didn't quite get to the Agile at the end, but I'm kind of presuming most people have a fair idea what you mean by being adaptive to a VUCA situation, as we've been calling it recently.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, well, what Agile really brings in there, and it fits really nice with the probing aspect, the classic inspect and adapt. So learning then from the probes, and then take that learning also into like your next cycle, whatever cycle you're having here. And maybe I really want to stress that again. I said before that for an Agile company, Agile is really more in the literal sense. And again, I want to stress this way, that I see too often that people think, okay, that means we introduce Scrum in all different levels. And I sometimes feel like the Scrum is the hammer here and everything is a nail. Yeah. And of course, if, for example, the board of directors are running their meetings with the backlog, and maybe somebody plays the role of the Scrum Master and they're doing it standing up, maybe their meetings are getting better. Probably they do, I don't know. However, it doesn't make the company any more agile. And this is the point I want to get it. So Scrum is, or whatever it is, it's a too narrow view. And so I think we really have to have that holistic perspective, and we do hope that with Bossa Nova we provide that holistic perspective. And maybe this is, I also look at the clock here, maybe that's the other thing, the Nova, which doesn't stand for any particular stream, but it stands for, well, there's more stuff out there, and those fall like Björn Patching, Open Space, Sociocracy, and Agile. This is not the end to the world. There's always more stuff that can help you to really become an Agile company. And now that I pointed out the Nova, maybe I also point out what Bossa Nova really means. So, because that's also kind of a nice thing. So we came up with that by, we had the synthesis and then played around with the characters, and then the Bossa was there. And the thing is, Bossa Nova in Portuguese means new trend, new wave. And of course, this is kind of what we hope to get there. Then the other thing, which is really interesting, because Bossa Nova is a synthesis. So Bossa Nova is, in the original sense, a style of music, and as such a fusion of samba and cool jazz. So it's also a fusion, a synthesis, if you will. And then the last thing is that Bossa Nova is also a dance. And what I think, what we really can take from dancing, that as a dancer, you are influenced by the music that's played, but you are also influencing the music that is played. And I guess most of us have experienced that. So if you dance like wildly, then the DJ or the band responds to that, and vice versa. And this is also how we see an Agile company or Bossa Nova company, how it behaves in its ecosystem. So it's also like a responsive system.
You have some case studies in the book of companies that are implementing things like this?
Yes, so we have different things. So on the one hand, we have what we call insight boxes from different companies who say like what they're doing. And the other thing is that I think it's part 3, which is the probing thing, where we have about 20-something probes, and all those probes are coming from different companies. So these are also examples what companies have tried, and what you can learn from, and of course you can just use the same probe. However, what I really see more people doing is they get inspired by a probe.
So don't use the Spotify model, use the Spotify concept to create your own model. Do your own thing, be inspired, and try something out. Thank you very much. Okay,
Yeah,
thank you so
context
much.
matters.
So I think we'll unless you've,
Thank
like I said,
you.
you've still got another minute or two if you want to say anything else. But I think we've pretty much covered it. Super, very interesting. Thank you very much indeed.
Yeah, I guess we let people
Yeah,
find
well,
their other
just
sessions.
on that note, people, we're taking a
Yeah.
break for lunch now for an hour till 1 o'clock. In between, feel free to come out, check out the networking down on the bottom there, where we have a couple of questions you need to ask people, and you can sort of join people randomly for 5 minutes for a really quick chat just to get to learn people and stuff like that. And we'll be starting back at 1 o'clock with the session on the agile transformations, which will be auf Deutsch in German. God bless me. Everybody else is going to be fine, but I'm going to struggle. So listen, thank you all very much. Thank you again, Jutta. That was really interesting.
It was really great. I had a lot of fun.
The good thing about
I'm
COVID is
sorry
there's
that
time
I
to
was
read
late.
books. So I have no excuse.
Yes.
Excellent. Take care.
Great.
Thanks.
Great.
See you
Okay.
guys later.
Thank you. Bye-bye.